What's the strangest conversation you've overheard in a language people assumed you didn't understand? One time a friend was over in my dorm and he answered his phone to his friend and he answered in Chinese. I didn't think much of it. He was fluent and I figured it was one of his close friends. I was playing a video game and on Ventrilo. So while he was speaking a few feet away, I was queuing in to laugh at a joke or call out a boss pull. Well, a few minutes later, someone whispers me in game and is like, "Just so you know, that guy is telling his friend he's about to score with you in Chinese." Yeah. We never hung out much after that. I was at the airport last week when there was a huge queue at the customs part of the airport, where we all have to verify passports, all that other jazz. There was a line specifically for disabled people, and it was practically empty. My two muscly douchebag friends, I think it was a joke, walked into the disabled queue, and an attendant hurriedly rushed over and said, "You're not disabled." And this little old Chinese lady behind me in the queue, bless her, muttered, "Yeah, they are," in the head in Chinese. I was on the subway in Korea and these four high school boys were standing behind me, talking to each other like, "Look at her. OMG, foreigners are so pretty. She has really nice hair. You should talk to her." No way, dude. My English is shitty. You first. I turned around and just smiled and they freaked out and kept whispering like, "Oh god. Did she understand?" No way. She couldn't have. Did she? It was really funny. Made my day. I was in Brussels on the tram one morning when these two American girls with heavy southern accents began to talk really loudly about the city. How European guys are like in bed. How they think Belgium is ugly and small and crowded and whatnot and generally trash talking Europe. After a while they went, "Hey, do you think anyone here speaks English?" And a guy who's getting off the tram said, "We all speak English here," and left. Unfortunately, I speak a lot of languages, but no unexpected languages, so I don't have a lot of funny stories. I was in a random fast food place several years ago. I got my food and sat down to eat and read a bit. There were two Latino guys behind the counter who started out making fun of each other in Spanish. A few minutes later, I hear them start getting louder and realized they were now saying things directed at me. "What a rich looking guy. What a rick. Do you see me itch? What are you eating, you pussy?" And a few other things that included the word itch. Pussy etc. I'm a white dude and my Spanish isn't that great, but I have a clue. Plus, it's true that you always learn the bad words first. As I was leaving, I walked up to the counter and motioned one of them over and said, "Gerund favor?" And he suddenly looked a little sick and walked back to get the manager. His buddy heard me and also started to look sick to his stomach. The manager walked up and I said quietly, "Do those guys speak English?" And he said, "No. Not really." "Why?" "So." I pointed at them and said, angrily in English, "The food was fine. I enjoyed my lunch. Good day." They flinched visibly and I walked out. Seemed the fair thing to do. Dart. I was on an Amtrak with my boyfriend who was watching West Wing. And as it was 8 AM, I just didn't have it in me to really enjoy it, so I opted to read my book instead. We were sitting at one of the tables with two benches opposite one another. And there were two French ladies in their mid-60s sitting across from us. They were having a great conversation in French. And then I heard one of them go, essentially, "Oh. The boys in every country. They are all the same. You put a pretty girl next to them. A girl they think will stay there. And they'd rather watch a screen. You take the pretty girl away and they go chasing after her, saying they never want to look at anything else." I just started cracking up and they were really embarrassed and started apologizing profusely. But I thought it was hilarious. Boyfriend sat there looking confused, smiled awkwardly, and kept watching West Wing. I spent much of the rest of the train ride chatting it up with the French ladies. So I went into a Russian store with my friend. We both know Russian but are Americans. And he's married to an American woman. As we walk in, He's talking to his wife in English. There's a Russian couple already in there shopping. It's a small store, and as we walk around she starts complaining to her husband about those goddamn Americans. Why are they even in here? She threw out a few swear words and just wouldn't shut up. Then, right as we walk past them, my friend says to his wife, in flawless Russian, "I've got to go, honey." This itch in the store won't shut up and I'm starting to get pissed. The look on her face. Priceless. Already posted this. But it applies. I overheard a bunch of French tourists in Nepal discussing, in graphic detail, the diarrhea they'd been having for a few days, that is. I can't tell if it's a fart or it's sheet. After a while they turned to me and my friends and asked, in English, where we are from. My friends answered, in French, "We're from the same place you are." And he, me, is from Quebec. Their look of embarrassment was just delectable. The awkwardness was palpable, more so than their poop. My girlfriend's 90-year-old Czech grandpa was at a library in Florida once a few years ago. He was waiting in line to check out a book when a Czech couple comes up behind him. Hardly anyone speaks Czech, let alone in Florida. So they thought they could say whatever they wanted. They're talking about how the guy wants to do her right there and that they can't wait to get home to have super naughty time. All the while describing everything they're going to do to each other. Once my girlfriend's grandpa checks out, he turns around to the couple and says, "Have a good day," in Czech. Their faces drop and turn white as the 90-year-old man struts out of the public library. I'm Pakistani, but I look white Arab. I have very pale skin, light colored eyes, etc. Most other brown people, those who speak Urdu, Hindi or Punjabi, assume I don't understand. I was in a mobile shop looking for a charger. I overheard one of the brown guys working say in Punjabi, "Just charge her £10 extra. She won't know." I told him quite calmly in Punjabi that I'd like it for £10 off. Thank you. On a high school class trip to France, a buddy and I went to the beach in Nice. We were 16 or 17 and were quite interested in learning more about French culture. Specifically, French women going topless at the beach. A young American couple put a towel down near us. The girl, who was gorgeous, was arguing with her boyfriend. She wanted to go topless, but he didn't want her to. Something about not wanting creepy guys looking at her bobs. Her argument, God love her, was that they're in France, where it's customary to go topless. And since everyone there was French, no one is going to give her spectacular breasts. My words, not hers. A second thought. They continued to discuss the pros and cons, while my friend and I had the most flawless discussion about cheese our 3 years of French class would allow. Never in my life had I worked so hard on proper inflection and correct verb conjugation. Don't mind us. Just a couple of French dudes who have no interest in seeing you topless. Eventually, the BF left, and the top came off. We passed as French and were well rewarded for our efforts. Remember kids, study hard and stay in school. Eventually, the BF returned. We had to get back to the hotel, so we reluctantly gathered up our stuff. And as we started to walk away, my friend turned and told them to enjoy the rest of their vacation, in English. The looks on their faces were priceless. Me and my friend were on a holiday in Spain. We took the train back from Barcelona to Malgrat de Mar when two Spanish guys aged 16-18 were looking for tourists to pick on. Apparently me and my friend looked like easy targets. Two girls, aged 22, wearing skirts, looking pretty nerdy and innocent. So we just sat there minding our own business when they started to pick on us and call us names. After a couple of warnings, we had enough. So we both stood up at the same time. We are Dutch, and Dutch girls are very tall, much taller than the Spanish guys. Went over to them and told them, if you're looking for trouble, you can get it. So if you are smart, you better shut up. End of the story. We literally kicked the guys out of the train when the train stopped at the nearest station. A group of German people had seen Alice and couldn't stop talking about what had happened. Not knowing that we could understand them. They said, "Did you see that? Did you see that? It was a foot in his ass. A foot. In his ass." Totally made our day. I'm Indian. But living in CA, most people think I am Mexican. Getting ready to board a plane to Hawaii. Ansar is checking bags again at the gate for random searches. My dad jokingly exclaims in Hindi that we are all going to get randomly searched to get ready to run. The white guy in front of us starts chuckling. And then gets stopped instead of us. He turns around and says in Hindi, "You guys go on without me. I'll distract them." I was at a Mexican restaurant with a bunch of my girlfriends and one guy friend. We were at the bar and my guy friend overheard the bartender joking with another worker saying, "Let's get this gringo drunk and steal his women." He looked at them and responded, "This gringo speaks Spanish, but if you're paying." While most Americans don't speak Spanish, enough of us do that it seems pretty stupid to assume any particular person won't understand. This doesn't fit the parameters. But I like the story, so I'm going to make it fit. OP will also not like this story. Maybe. I was in Stockholm on vacation and two Swedish girls were walking towards me, having a very heated conversation. It was clear the one girl was extremely irked by whatever they were talking about. The conversation goes, Swedish. Swedish, and then he told me I sounded like the Swedish chef on the Muppets. Other girl. Gasps, he did not. End scene. I was on the tube a few years ago. I'm a white guy. Had a skinhead and was wearing an England football shirt. I looked like a stereotypical racist. Old Iranian couple in front of me. Husband said to wife that I looked like a racist. I learned Farsi at university. That surprised them. For those who are not deaf, but speak ASL, American Sign Language, they often speak along with signing. One time in a coffee shop, I heard someone talking to their friend aloud, while signing what her friend assumed were the proper signs. However, I noticed that the woman speaking was signing something completely different. A woman sitting across the room was signing back to her, as they were having a conversation of their own. Those speaking were discussing the non-signing lady's work. But those signing were discussing the non-signing lady's sex life. I can only hope the two signers knew each other. When we were 19, my two best friends and I were studying in Spain and decided to take a side trip to France. We were traveling light and trying to save money, as poor college students tend to do, and had stuffed our carry-on bags with lots of granola bars and snack foods to sustain us for the weekend. Apparently we were also obviously American. At the security check, the conversation between the workers went something like this. "Look at this bag. Fat Americans. Always eating. Can they not even make a flight without food? I think if Americans stop eating, they die. Why else would they be so fat?" The best part was the looks on their faces when my friend looked at them and said, in perfect Spanish, "Thank you. Can you tell us where our gate is? And where we can find a McDonald's? I'm so hungry." My dad, the best I could describe him is white rotten. He is fluent in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. But he never taught any of his children the language. Moving on. My dad was helping his friend at a garage sale. My dad, his friend, and his wife were sitting on lawn chairs. A Mexican family came up and they were looking around and my dad relayed everything. The family talked about the high prices. The guy's wife is ugly. And his friend is fat. The family bought a mattress off of them and my dad helped load the mattress into their car. As they were about to drive off, my dad said in Spanish, "Thank you very much. Have a great day and if you ever need anything, come back." They went wide-eyed and drove off quickly. Whilst hiking in Guatemala, a group of 3 men with machetes is walking down the trail in the opposite direction. They stop and talk to the guide. In Spanish. "We don't want trouble. But if you don't want trouble, it's 20 quetzals, money, for each tourist." Guide. "That is shit. The going rate is 10 and you know it." I will give you 10 robbers. Okay, that works. When you're done with your hike, we are making tea. If you are tired, we will share our tea with you. Guide in English. They say they want to share some tea with you guys on our way back down. Tourists. Okay, that sounds lovely. I ended up talking to them for a while about their lives in rural Guatemala. I am not surprised they were robbing because of how difficult making a living is there. They were actually pretty nice and normal other than the robbing thing. I worked at a pool a while back and I'm extremely white looking but also very fluent in Spanish. A family came in at one point asking about memberships if we had day passes. I could tell that English wasn't their first language. But I always feel awkward jumping into Spanish in these situations because of my appearance and I don't want to come across as presumptuous. Anyway, I explained to them very nicely how membership works and that no, sorry, we didn't have day passes, but I could recommend some pools that do. At this point, the wife turns and says to the husband, "Este gringo quiere las cosas más difíciles. Vamos a otra piscina." This whitey's just trying to make it more difficult, presumably because she thinks I'm racist. Let's try another pool. Incredibly uncomfortable for me. But not as uncomfortable as it was for them when I gave them directions to the pool with day passes and wished them a nice day and good luck in Spanish. I used to ride the subway from Seoul to Ozan a lot. I would go sightseeing or shopping and overheard many a conversation about myself. Usually nice things. Simply being white exotic made me seem particularly attractive despite being an American average. The worst was when these two girls, all decked out for the clubs, were loudly discussing how big my eyes were and how white I was. They kept getting out of their seats to look at me or leaning around other people to whack. Everyone else started staring at me also. It was so uncomfortable being stared at. But at least it was complimentary. Usually if it was negative they only whispered it to each other quietly and was easy to ignore. I was in Florence, and some older Russian men were looking at the mock David in the plaza. The two old farts look him up, down, eyes hovering at mid-waist. The one on the right shook his head. I thought it would be bigger. These two old women started talking about how great men's butts looked while on a bus. They were speaking Romanian, which isn't exactly a common language in America. While they were talking about me, I turned around and said, "Thank you. Ladies, gentlemen, always keep the class." My friend, a white curly-haired, freckled face, American, point is, he is very Caucasian, was getting his car valet parked for him here in Oklahoma. The man parking his car was speaking Spanish to a fellow employee and said that he was going to cut my friend's head off and steal his car once he gave him the keys, joking of course. Before handing him the keys, my friend said to him in perfect Spanish, "Please do not cut my head off or steal my car. That would really ruin my day. I hope you have a good afternoon." My friend's description of this guy's face after he said that cannot be described with words. The best I can think of is that he looked like someone had just run over his puppy and then backed up over it.